This is a game that was played between two players at the Madison Chess Club. If you remember, blue arrows are good moves and green lines are suggested moves. So the first few moves, you'll see a lot of like blue arrows going into red arrows. These weren't terrible moves, and it's still in the opening. A lot of things can happen in the opening of a game. Now here, there is a red arrow, which means that that is not a good move. And if you look at the details, which is where on the right side of the screen you see the number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Those are the top 4 moves, and they correspond with the green lines. I'm just going to guess that this move was given a red arrow because it really doesn't develop anything. You really want to develop the pieces towards the center of the board. And again, we have a red arrow here. Not a huge difference in scores. You can still see that the scores are, just hovering around the 0 mark. If you remember, positive numbers on the right-hand side means that white's ahead, and negative numbers means that black's ahead. So black is just slightly ahead here. Okay, you can see that we're still getting some blue arrows here from both sides. And this is one part of the game that I decided to look at really closely. When I first saw the red arrow, I thought that it was because black was moving the f-pawn. But if you look, one of the top 4 moves, it's the number 4 move, is actually the black pawn moving up 1. But to explain why moving the black pawn up 2 isn't a good move, you have to look at what white can do. So here, black moves up 2 squares, and you'll notice that white has a blue arrow, but eventually that disappears and it goes to the other pawn. I see this a lot in chess games. When I analyze chess games, that chess players have the right moves, they just don't do them in the right order. And I thought this was a really interesting place in this game. The move that white makes is actually supposed to be the second move in the sequence and not the first move. And the reason why is that if you move the pawn up here 1, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, the queen is almost trapped. Because if you look at all the other squares, there are no other squares that the queen can go to. Now, considering the level of chess that we play at State, most chess players probably would not realize that their queen is trapped, and the chess player might do something like develop one of the pieces, maybe like right out to here. But then, do you see how white could trap the black queen? And the answer is by moving the pawn up 1. And now the black queen is trapped, and white is going to get a scalp. Because no matter where white moves to, as far as the open squares, they're going to get captured. So white would get a scalp and should have a pretty easy game to finish with. However, this game doesn't go like that, and at first moving up the pawn up 1 was a blue move, and it really is not a terrible move. It just doesn't trap the queen. And you're going to see here that black is going to be able to get their queen out of that mess. And you can still see we've got a lot of blue arrow moves, or moves that start off with blue arrows and then turn into red arrows. So really neither side has played that badly. Right now you can see that white is ahead by the equivalent of 1.5 points. And here is something really interesting. There's 2 different captures, and this is something about chess that I haven't learned yet, like what the best capture is. Because if the knight captures, which is the move that is made, you're going to see that the game is going to turn out a lot more even than it would if, rather, let's say that the queen would take instead. And again, I don't know why that is, and I haven't taken the time to investigate those moves. But this is interesting. Look at the queens and how the queens are going up against each other. And this has to do with tunnel vision and chess players getting focused in on certain areas of the board and not really taking the time to look at the entire board. Because look at the things that happen over the next sequence of moves. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the black queen has been free for capture over and over again. And if you look at those numbers in the details box, right now white could be ahead by 13 points just by taking that queen. But the chess players were so into the game that they were playing that they didn't notice all of those things that were going on between their queens. And so you can see the game stays pretty even throughout the entire game. There really hasn't been any really major mistakes with the exception of white being able to take that queen for free. But the scores are all staying around, -1 up to about 1.5. So these two players are actually fairly even in chess. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail because there were some better moves that could have been made, but more positional moves rather than moves that could really make a huge difference in the game. And if you want to take this game, copy the moves and put them in your own version of this app, if you have the app, then you could take a look at the other moves and see why those moves were so good. Now here's the last thing I want to look at. The white bishop is being protected by the white pawn, and that's the only defender that it has. But white, taking that black pawn, is going to lose the defender on the bishop, which may not be necessarily a bad thing, but white forgets about it and ends up losing that bishop. And it was probably a big enough advantage for black that black could finish up the game and win. So we're going to look at these next few moves here. And now black takes the bishop. And now black is ahead, not quite by 2 points, but pretty close. And unfortunately, this is all the further that the game was analyzed. So again, it wasn't too bad of a game. The score kind of hovered around that -1 to +1.5. No real big mistakes, with the exception of a queen being left open for free. And again, if you want to take a look at some of the reasons why some of the moves were given red arrows, you can plug this game into your iPad or whatever mobile device you have. Experiment with some of the moves and try to figure out why things happen the way they did.